told the way that you want. So as somebody who works in multiple languages, I'm like fascinated to know sort of what you think about all of that.
First of all, I want to say that I'm born in Romania, close to the Hungarian border, in an area that is like three countries, edge, with Serbia, Hungary, and Romania. It is a part of the country that belonged to the Austrian-Hungarian Empire. Multicultural, multilingual, and in fact very open to every influence. And I used to, I grew up until I was 10 in a surrounding marked by different languages. We spoke in a family, also Hungarian, Italian, some German, but really some German, just little German. And Romanian became important after I went to school. When I left home with 10, all these context changed. And later, when I studied in Bucharest, this was a completely different situation, because in our area, you could speak every language you wanted, and nobody cared. Maybe if you spoke Chinese or something very exotic, but otherwise everything was not natural, normal. When I went to Bucharest, every other language was, created attention. And the only language that was more naturally in this area was French, because before the communism, rich families used to speak French in the family and speak Romanian only with the servants. So I grew up in this context, and with languages, with the sound of different languages. And we also sometimes spoke one sentence in different languages. So, and sometimes I do it even today, and even here it happened very often to me. And the funny thing was that I was speaking in German with my translator, and then started to mix with English, because somehow English is because English is in the air and penetrates me just because I'm here. And so this is the story with the languages. When I arrived in Berlin, I was concentrating on the Romanian language, on refining my Romanian literary language, of course, and trying to create a compromised language, and very clear. I used to erase every word that was not absolutely necessary, and created sometimes sentences, which I also create today, sentences made just by one word. If you can call it in sentences, but I dare to say they are a seed, and in that seed there is all the rest inside. You don't hear it or read it, but you feel it. And yes, I thought at the beginning that I came to Berlin as a DAAD. It is the Deutsche Akademische Austauschdienst, the exchange, the artistic program of the DAAD. So it went 1 year in Germany, in Berlin, to work on a project. At that time, I had no idea that I will stay in Germany. And I thought that I will isolate myself in the Romanian language and refine it as much as to become like, I don't know, a pearl, a diamond or something. But it was of course, it was forced because but I'm so receptive to language and to the sound of the words and to the suggestion that they create, the associations, this transformation process that happens in your mind, and then you feel the need to put it into on paper or into the computer. And so at the beginning I started to write Romanian, and from time to time German invaded, just like that, you know. My German was very bad at the time, very, very bad. But still, the language was so powerful that it invaded my text, and I had to cut the words. I wrote them and then I cut them because otherwise the file was too, big. And later, when I decided to accept this fact that the language is so powerful, I let it into my writing, and until the day when my writing became German. And today, I do not think about in which language I want to write. It became the natural way of thinking with myself, you know, self-dialogue, self-monologue, dialogue sometimes. And so I'm writing in German. But, of course, my German is always full of other languages, of words of other languages. And sometimes I choose Hungarian or other language that in that moment the word that seems to me more appropriate, more suggestive, more and it comes to me because of that. I use it.
I was stunned as you were talking about the punishment, and I suddenly realized that I too was in the corner on my knees all morning under different auspices. But the question I have is, how did you grow up, or you were probably of age already, and avoid being like your mother? And when the most difficult steps in such a process are the first ones. So I think it's rather a miracle that children can grow up and avert in their own lives the mistakes, to put it mildly, of their parents that have inflicted on them.
Thank you. Thank you for this question. Yeah, it's not easy and not easy to answer. I think that there were at least two important things that saved me from becoming, to be self-reflexive and to recognize also moments when I had moments where I was in danger to become like my mother. And one of the important things was that I was reading since I was 5, 6, very soon, and started to read and to write. And reading, and it was the only thing that my parents didn't control. We had a large library, because at that time in Romania, they were publishing, if there was not a book that was definitely against communism, they were translating everything, and most interesting, the newest books, literary translation, everything what was new in literature at the moment was translated in Romania. It was, if it was not anti-communist. So there was also the possibility to have like an abonnement and we got every week, every month, the newest books. So I had an amazing library, and I was eating and drinking of the books, yeah. And I think this was one of the most important things, that I could see the world from different perspectives. I could experience the life of so many people, of people who were victims and of people who were transformed themselves from victims to people who took their lives in their own hands. I could see so much, and I started to read novels like when I was 8 or something. And then yes, the big literary works were there, and I could read them. And if they were Russians, if they were French, if they were Latin American or American or English, everything was there. This is one aspect. The other was that I started very soon to write. And writing is a very important process for everyone, not only for a writer, but for every person. It helps very much to see who you are, to see how you want to be and how you don't want to be. It helps to find your solutions for your life. It is yours. Nobody can take it away from you. Nobody. It's your real, your power, your discovery tool. It's everything. It's the most. I think that this is important to know, that writing is healing and helping a lot each person. So was another aspect that helped me. And the other was, I had a grandmother I saw once in a year, but meeting her once in a year was extremely important. It touched my heart, and it lasted, the warm touch lasted until the next year. So I think these were the important things that helped.
Do you want to let her read from?
Yeah, sure.
Do you want to read from your other book?
Yes.
Now, and then
Okay.
if we have any concluding questions.
What was Mother's Day written? What language was it written in? German.
German.
Deutsch.
I also have to say that I decided also, I explained how it came to write in German, but still, after that, it was a conscious decision, because it helped me to create a distance, not only a geographical, but also an emotional distance. Not to create a melodrama, or just to try to be as objective as possible, and to look to who this person is. And that's why I also created these chapters like mother's heart, mother's tongue, mother's neck, and so on. Because with each part of the body, I connected a story, and I could put everything then together and understand this character, this person, this unknown, who was in this case my mother, but this is not so important that it was my mother. I think it's the way we can help ourselves with things that we do not understand. Yeah. I will read from Berlin is my Paris, the story with the title Berlin is my Paris. Berlin is my Paris. I came to Berlin the way one used to come to Paris. I came in order to measure myself against the world. It was a closed circle that I broke out of, a circle that history had burst open, and I was a part of this history. I came to Berlin after the Wende. Everything in the world turned about face at this time. So not just me. The world was unsettled all over, not all over the world, but the whole world. It wasn't apparent for everyone. One had to comprehend it first. It looked as though I had arrived somewhere where there are fixed rules that have to be adopted and internalized, and if one wants to survive. I didn't come to survive. I came to measure myself, to measure my strengths. And the first thing that happened to me, I broke down. I came to Berlin without knowing that I would want to stay. I didn't know at the time that Berlin is my Paris. I didn't yet know that Berlin is on its way. I was also on my way. I came from a country at the edge of Europe with a language that very few knew, recognized. And as soon as I arrived here, I lost myself. I was no longer capable of doing the simplest things. I was able to have a headache and a stiff back. Everything else I'd forgotten. I was tired, so tired that I forgot what joy is, and didn't even notice. I was tired, so tired. Friends asked me if they couldn't possibly do something nice for me.
This is Leo. For actualized is not boring.
A
Leo
small,
talks about a critical topic.
a small favor. Even a publisher from Austria asked me this. I thought about it for a long time and found no answer. I forgot what Joyce is and became frightened that I wouldn't be able to express the forgotten, that I wouldn't be able to do anything anymore, and that everything that I'm still capable of is meaningless. I admired cleaning women who cleaned one window, the ones who had the strength to do so and who knew how to do it. I had forgotten everything. My English, my Hungarian, my Italian, breathing, sleeping, speaking, cooking. I went into grocery stores and came out with spells of dizziness. I used to have to cook from whatever was there, a zucchini from the garden, an onion. A meal was supposed to come out of it. Every now and then there was milk. Once a month oil and sugar too. On national holidays there was also flour. The art of improvisation was needed. One could compensate one's urge for freedom through the art of survival, so as not to lose one's own sense of self-worth. Now, suddenly in Berlin, everything was different, and I no longer knew how to cook, and what there was to cook, and whether there was any purpose at all to cook anymore. I came to Berlin to discover that I had forgotten how to breathe and everything else. Breathing is the most difficult and takes the longest to learn, to relearn. And without breathing, it's impossible to cook, and especially to speak, especially not speak, express oneself. And one cannot, and when one cannot express oneself, then one came to Berlin in vain. And then, not even Paris can help. It looked as though I had arrived somewhere where there are fixed rules. Rules that I didn't know. As though I had to discard everything that I had known before. And yet, I came to Berlin the way one went to Paris. To Paris, But I was told again and again, but Berlin is not Paris, and I'm not a fool, and I know. And yet I said, I seek in Berlin what some had found in Paris. Berlin is not Paris, I'm told. Berlin, one says to me, has no flair and no lightness. I look out my window on Leipziger Straße at the new roofs and the forest of cranes. I left Bucharest when it became the biggest abandoned construction site in Europe, to find the biggest construction site here. Berlin is not yet Berlin. When I arrived here, I didn't know that yet. I believed to be on solid ground here, where everyone knows something about which I knew nothing. I believed I would have to completely reinvent myself. I didn't dare to go to the east. Reeked of Bucharest, of overflowing, of seething garbage bins. The familiar smell of fermenting garbage paralyzed me. I couldn't acquire a taste for it. I had written it in protest against the garbage bins, against the rats, and against the decay in Romania, and now I should encounter it again. Berlin was not at all Berlin. I injured myself on the window panes and mirrors in the west. Out of pure cleanliness, they stood like invisible, dangerous walls in the room and deceived one's view. I didn't see them and believed it was my fault. I didn't dare leave crumbs behind in a world without crumbs, and that there were crumbs. For that, I felt responsible. A world without crumbs and a world with seething garbage bins are difficult to reconcile with one another. It is not a task that one resolves overnight. It is not just my task, it is a historical task. One day I moved onto Leipziger Straße in the east. Here too Berlin was not yet Berlin, and I had to make headway with myself. It is not an easy task to be Berlin. Berlin is a metaphor, an expression for the emerging present, for the future history. I live on Leipziger Straße in a high-rise with a view of the Springer building and a view of the synagogue. A view of the cranes that populate the area like a forest. The dust from Potsdamer Platz rises up to me. Day and night, a piece of Berlin changes in front of my eyes, and I change with it. It is not an easy task to be Berlin, and no one can back out of it. One doesn't live here in vain. One does not stay unaffected. I write my books at Checkpoint Charlie, in the Café Adler, in Sale Tabacchi. I sit at the table and look like an eagle to the east and the west. Every day buses full of tourists drive through the city and stop in front of the Adler. These people don't have the task of living in Berlin. They come in intervals to see that Berlin has already become Berlin. I sit at the table and write my books. I'm beholden to Berlin. This Berlin that isn't yet Berlin, that it will become one day even through my presence. I'm beholden to myself. This I discovered here. I'm connected to Berlin through the tasks that it poses me, through the freedom that it grants me to relearning, to peace, and of bringing this learning to expression. I'm a part of Berlin, and not yet I measure myself against myself and the world. I leave behind tracks. They are also a part of Berlin, of the Berlin that should become Berlin. Berlin is not yet Berlin. It is an incomplete place that cannot do without me. Berlin is my Paris. Thank you.
I want to say I made a faux pas. I meant to thank Modern Languages and Literature and Department of English for also co-sponsoring, being so supportive with this event. I don't know, somehow I didn't read that when I introduced you, but I just wanted to say thank you. And I wanted to say if there's some questions from the students especially right now, please go ahead and ask. Yes.
I can talk about.
Okay.
For the Mother's Day, that reading, how exactly did you find yourself through finding out about your mother, by not, like as you said, you weren't, what is it, your mother's daughter, or a mother yourself? How did you go about finding who you are as a person through your mother's experience? Learning.
One second, please. How?
Like, how did you find yourself through
Yeah.
going through your history of your mother?
It was, for me, a long time that I was working on this book, about 30 years. I mean, I did not write, I was thinking about it, writing in my head, over years and years. And it took me a lot of courage to set and write about this. Also because mother is something that in Romanian culture, but not only, but in Romanian culture is something like untouchable, something, a saint. Mother is a saint, and you can't judge her or accuse her, or she is above everything. So and beyond everything. It took me a lot of courage to write in a way that is unconventional, I would say. To look at me and to look at her without judging, because in fact I do not judge. I describe, I observe, I observe my feelings when I remember stories, and it was a very painful process. If you want to know also details, I was writing and crying and drinking water. and I wrote a book in many places, even in the United States. I started it here so many years ago, and then I stopped and wrote other books, and because the story went on in my head, and then I put it onto paper, and I was not happy with the way I wrote about it. So I reduced, I changed, until I found this form of to compose the body of the person and to connect the stories to each part of the body. And this was the way I could also touch the mother, like to touch her body and to try to touch also her heart, even if she doesn't exist, she was not existing anymore. And after I wrote the book, there was a certain degree of I didn't recognize, I reconciled with my mother after many, many years, but not immediately after finishing the book. But it was a big relief also, and also it was a way to look to myself and to see what made me what I am and how I am. And I was grateful that I could, that I had the energy, the power, the courage to do it. In the end, I was happy. It was really the feeling that I was happy, that I did something important, something that had, had a value, and not only for myself. It had value, I think, and also as I hear it from the readers, it has the value to help others who have no words for this, or no courage to put these feelings or questions into words, to help them to look through the eye of a book, through the eye of another person, of a writer. And this gives me a good feeling, yes, that it's an accomplishment.
Is one of the chapters about your mother's eyes?
Yes, there is. Yes.
I would be happy to listen to you speak the entire novel. Your style translates fantastically into spoken word. But my question to you is that maybe just a few words on the editorial process, because you're talking about projects that are so personal to you. You know, and ultimately you're going to work with an editor. How did that work out for you?
Well, I have to say that the editorial part was not amazing. I mean, I presented the book and small changes were made. You mean by the publisher, yes?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
You know, there's the editorial process going back and
The
forth.
process happened during all these years, and I created, or what I wrote, a book that in the end was not really edited anymore. It was, or minimum things which were maybe not perfect in German, but it had nothing to do with the structure of the book or with the way I wrote it, or, yeah, it was ready. It was just ready, but it took so many years. It took I told you, for 30 years, yeah. But I was thankful that I had to write this book, because I went to a publisher. The translation is published the English translation is published by Catherine Nasli at Palmer Press, but the German book was published by Rollbuch Verlag. And Rollbuch signed a contract with me after reading 30 pages. And then they gave me, like it was May, and they said on the 11th of July, you have to be ready with the book, edited, everything. And it was like a trance when I then wrote the book, you know. But after working on it 30 years, then I just said, okay, now I have to do it. I have to do it now. And then it went like day and night. It was like a trance, like the musicality of the language and of the text and of the, you know, some parts are really like poems. There is also a play, a short Mother